Good morning, afternoon, everybody. Jason here from Murideo, and today we've got a really cool webinar. We're going to be going over some of the latest and greatest Murideo products. We wanted to give everybody sort of a rundown. Maybe you're new to Murideo, or maybe you're not new to Murideo, and you want to see a little bit of a deeper dive and hear a little bit more about our Murideo products. So we've got quite a bit to cover today, so I don't want to ramble on here at the beginning, but I do have a special guest with me today. Dustin is our sales VP at Murideo, and he has one of the greatest beards I've ever seen. So Dustin, say hi to everybody. Introduce yourself.
Hey guys, as Jason said, my name is Dustin Stunebeck. I am the VP of Sales here at Murideo. Pretty much anytime you call or talk to anybody, it's going to be myself and or Jason. Glad to have you all here. Welcome to the world of Murideo, and for those of you who do know it, as Jason said, welcome to the refresher. It's always a good time to go through these things. I'm not going to be long-winded also because we do have a lot to cover in an hour here. So I'll kick it back over to Jason, but thank you so much for joining us. I'm very excited to get this rolling.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dustin. Nice to see you. Hope everything's well up in Sioux Falls. Also, I do have Tom Devine, our marketing director. He is also monitoring the chat box and the question box, guys. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free, send those questions into the question box. If not, we'll leave you a little bit of time at the end. And of course, you guys can always reach out to us directly if there is anything that we can help with. So without further ado, let's go ahead and, can you guys see my PowerPoint? Just want to make sure before I get too deep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. So again, guys, this is the Murideo 2020 webinar. We're going to be covering a few different products today. So hang tight because we've got quite a bit to cover. I want to definitely go over a little bit of an intro on some of the products, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into some of the hands-on demos and whatnot. So we have a few different products here. We've got the Murideo 6A and 6G. We've got the Murideo Fox and Hound. We've got the Murideo 7G, and our newest product, which was developed between us and M Solutions. It's called the MS Test Pro, which is used for testing HD-based T. So between all the different tools that we're going to see today, guys, whether you're an integrator, a calibrator, an integrator who calibrates, an integrator who does a lot of troubleshooting, maybe a manufacturer who needs to test their products before they go to market, things like that. I think everybody that's watching the webinar will find some great use for some of these tools. So let's take a look at the lineup. Just want to cover real quick in case you are new to Murideo. Who are we? We've been around since 2011. We started off as a test equipment manufacturer and doing a lot of things with display calibration. The CEO of the company, Jeff Murray, has a long history with the ISF. He started off, he worked many years, I should say, with Sencor, which also made test equipment back in those early days. Jeff's son, Matt, is our CTO. With a combination of those two, here we are. Matt has a very keen eye and a very good instinct when it comes to what people need in the field. We take a lot of feedback from the installers, and we make some of these great products for you. Our goal really, guys, is to make a product that helps your life go a lot easier. So being able to use test equipment, generators, analyzers, it just cuts the troubleshooting time down, very down to very little time. And again, we do take a lot of feedback from you guys. So if you do see some products and you wish it had this feature, or wish it could do this, or wish it could do that, we are extremely open to that kind of feedback. So feel free, guys, let us know if you see anything really cool that you think that can be cooler. We got ahead of the game early on, making 4K HDR test equipment, and we're now looking into HDMI 2.1 and beyond. My name's Jason. As I said before, I've been with the company now for almost 4.5 years, I want to say. It's been really fun. It's been a blast. We've normally we get to travel and do in-person classes and things like that, but of course, with the way things are right now, we're doing everything virtual. But going forward, when we are doing some live classes, whether it's ISF or one of the academy classes that we do, you will most likely see me there. I started off as an enthusiast. I grew up around this stuff. Great-grandfather was a TV radio repair guy. Grandfather on the other side of the family, he was always into big TVs and big stereos. So was my dad. So I kind of grew up around this stuff. I love it to death. And by the time I was old enough to work, this was the industry that I decided to pursue. So if you guys ever want to give me a shout, feel free, jason@murideo.com. I love 2-channel. I love music. I love big stereos. I love big TVs. So if you guys have any questions or want to talk about that kind of stuff, I am totally open to it. So a few of the products that we're going to talk about today, again, if you're a manufacturer, integrator, calibrator, any of those things, that all the products that we'll look at today should help you in some sort of way. The first thing we'll look at is the Murideo 6G generator. This is kind of the gold standard for handheld portable generators. We can do full HDMI 2.0, 4K, HDR, 60 frames per second, all that good stuff. It is an ISF certified tool. It does work with your favorite calibration software, and it is actually DPL lab certified, so it's a very solid tool. And anybody who works in the field, especially if you've been around any calibrators or anything like that, you've probably seen this before. It is a great little tool. I've been using it myself since about 2014 or 15. Accompanying that is a 6A analyzer, which is kind of the accompanying analyzer that goes with the generator. What's great about using this as a combination is that you can put the generator in place of the source, you can put the analyzer in place of the display, and if there's several things in between the two, you can start to figure out, is the signal getting through, what's coming out of the generator, what am I seeing on the analyzer, and if what's going in is not what's coming out, then you can start your troubleshooting from there. So very helpful tools, being able to save EDIDs and read EDIDs, and tons of stuff that we'll look at today. Then we have the Fox and Hound troubleshooting kit. This is kind of the everyday integrator kit. It doesn't do a lot of the calibration stuff that the 6G does, but for the everyday integrator who's setting up systems, maybe troubleshooting systems, you're going back to a customer's house because maybe something's not working quite right. This is the tool for you. We'll take a look at some of the features, and I actually have an extender here too that we will. I'll show you how to test an extender. And again, you could test full signal chain, just one device, just a matrix switch, whatever you want with any of these tools. And then we have the 7G generator. This is kind of the next gen generator. This is really a product that we're very proud of, and it's very powerful. We are going to be growing into this product. So as you see some features today, just keep in mind we've stuffed this thing with a ton of memory and a ton of processing power. So as we grow and we learn new things and we start to do new things, especially with HDMI 2.1, you will see this product in a lot of hands, especially the manufacturers. If I'm a manufacturer of, say, sound bars or audio equipment, this is a great product to allow you to do things like eARC testing and making sure that all of those high-res audio formats are working, and lots of other cool things too. And then the last thing we'll look at is the brand new MS Test Pro. Again, that's for testing HD-Base-T. You can also test a couple of HDMI cables. A very, very powerful new tool as well. Okay, first we'll talk about the 6A and 6G. As I said before, these two can be used individually, or you can get them as a kit. I would always suggest getting them as a kit, even if you're just a calibrator. I've shown up to plenty of calibration jobs myself over the years, and it's kind of hard to calibrate the TV if the TV's not getting the right signal. So having the 6G in place of your source and the analyzer in place of your display, you can figure out what signal do I want to put through the system? Is everything in the system capable of handling that signal? So in those situations where you might have a source, an AVR, a matrix switch, and an extender, and then the display, there's several steps there. We have to make sure that everything in that system and in that signal chain is passing the proper signal. Also, you can use these and the Fox and Hound kit to test your cables, which is super, super important. Imagine you're going to a job site with a distributed video system, and you've got 40 HDMI cables in the system. I'd much rather test those before and find out which ones may or may not be working, and go ahead and replace them then before I go to the customer's house and all of a sudden I'm starting to try to install defective cables. And that causes a lot of time trying to troubleshoot things like that. So you can figure all this stuff out before you even go to the job site, which is super cool. Okay, so let's quickly just take a look at some of the features of the 6G. As I said before, it is full 18 gigabit per second, HDMI 2.0. You can do a lot of great testing with this. You can test for things like HDCP. You can read EDIDs. The 6G itself does come with a really cool piece of software, which we'll look at today. If you want to get a little bit deeper into some of the EDID functionality, and even down to the hex code, if you're a manufacturer and you need to see exactly what the EDID is down to the hex code, you can see that as well. The 6G does support all versions of HDR. It is ISF certified, as I said before. And this is really, again, guys, if you're an integrator and trying to pump signals through a system, or if you're a calibrator trying to optimize color and white balance and things like that on a display, this really is kind of your go-to type of tool. There's a few things here that I'll kind of just touch on lightly. There are some instances where manufacturers want the API for the 6G because they're doing some custom things. We certainly have that stuff available. Everything that we have as far as the free software that you can download, the drivers, all those types of things, anything that you might need when it comes to any of these products for that matter is easily found on Murideo.com. So without further ado, let's take a quick look at the 6G and just go over some of the basics. So the 6G itself, again, it can put out up to 4K, 18 gigabits per second. There's a button right here, the OK button. This is where we can go through and look at menus, check the battery status, set our versions of HDCP, set the different resolutions and frame rates. You can do quite a bit of testing with this. One of the things I wanted to show you right off the bat here, I'm going to switch cameras one more time, and we're going to plug in the 6G, and we'll just scroll through and take kind of a quick look at some of the test patterns and some of the things that you can do with it. So bear with me just a moment. Let's get that plugged in. And actually, let's do this. Let's plug in this longer cable.
Hey, Jason, Tom
Yes,
here.
sir. What's up, buddy?
Would you be able to hide your PowerPoint while you show your camera so that when we replay on YouTube, it'll be nice and big and wide?
Very, very good call. I'm glad you said that because I forgot to do that. So thank you, Tom. That's perfect. Okay, so let's switch over here to the monitor. I've just got a nice Hisense 55-inch here. You guys may have seen this TV in previous videos for calibration.
Jason, Tom here again. Sorry to interrupt. Now
okay.
we can see your PowerPoint, but we can't see your camera.
Okay, hold on just a moment. And that could have just been me hitting the wrong button. Okay, cool. Perfect. How's that? Looking good? Okay, cool.
Looking awesome.
All right, awesome. So one of the things I wanted to point out kind of right away is the ability to be able to read EDIDs and things like that. As we go through the generator, you can start to see, I can't remember the exact number, guys, but there are a ton of different test patterns in here for doing all kinds of different testing. And of course, if you're using this as a calibration tool, it will connect to your favorite calibration software. And what's really nice about that is a lot of that stuff can sort of be automated these days. So, you know, when you're doing things like reading grayscales and reading color gamuts, in a lot of cases nowadays, you just push a button and all of a sudden you can do those types of things. It does look like right now, I do have it set to HDR. We can sort of see that in the image right now, but let's just show you a quick example of how easy it is to turn some of these things off and on. We're going to go through the menu here and find the HDR menu, and we're going to, bear with me, I'm looking at this upside down. And here we go. We're going to turn the HDR off. I'm sorry, the wide color gamut off, and then we'll go through and just make sure that the HDR is turned off. Okay, cool. So as we're looking at the different test patterns that are in here, again, you have test patterns in here for different skin tones, for grayscale, for setting up a projector and getting the aspect ratio correct, setting white level, setting black level, all kinds of cool things. One thing I want to show you is the EDID, being able to read the EDID of a display. Now, why would you want to do that? So if you're expecting a system to be doing 4K HDR and you're not getting HDR on the other end or with the display, there's a very simple tool you can look at in here to read the EDID. And in the EDID, you can see exactly what the display is asking for. So if we're not getting HDR to the display and we read the EDID and the EDID doesn't have an HDR flag in it, then we know exactly what's wrong. So doing this type of troubleshooting and stuff, it's just very, very easy with these tools. So I'm going to go over into the menu and we're going to find the EDID page. And here we have the sync EDID information. We can see that it is a Hisense TV. We can see that it's connected with HDMI. We can see that the preferred timing is 4K 30, which I believe is what we're sending it now. It tells you a little bit about the audio information. It looks like it does LPCM2 channel. It looks like it also does AC3, so Dolby Digital, things like that. It also can support Dolby Digital Plus, which is nice. There's also a DTS here. There's also Dolby MAT, DTS HD. Here's where things get really cool. Does it support 3D? No. You know, we do have some customers out there and some end users out there who are really into 3D. So you can tell right away this does not do 3D. It'll tell you what version of what bit depth or what version of deep color. In this case, we're looking at like 30 bits. So that tells me that it's a 10-bit panel. Does it support 4K 24? Yes. Does it support 4K 60? Yes. Does it support HDR? Yes. Does it support Dolby Vision? And it does say here that it does support the low latency version of Dolby Vision. So what I want to do next is pull up the 6G software. So bear with me just a moment so I can switch over to that. And you guys should see the 6G software on the screen now. Let me go ahead and connect to it. So that's going to be, I wrote all these down before, that's going to be COM5. So let's go up here. We're going to go to COM5 and you'll see a red light top left. That means that we know that the generator is connected to the software. And we can start to look at some really cool things. Now, I said before with the EDID, we saw some basics, right? We saw that it was 4K 30, it supported HDR, it was a 10-bit panel, or at least the EDID was calling for 10-bit. If we go to the software here and tap on this EDID button, I can click Read EDID, and now look at everything that we can see. This tells you a lot more than what you could see just on the front panel. So here's the hex code. If you wanted to share or save this hex code, you certainly can. We do like to show people this because you might be in a situation where the EDID of the sync device that you're plugged into is actually wrong. And these are the kind of things you want to capture so you can give feedback to the manufacturer. Or if you're a manufacturer and you're working on your EDIDs, you can take these things, you can save them, you can pass them back and forth with coworkers, and you guys can really sit and figure out like what's going on here. So we could save the EDID itself to the 6G. With the 6G being able to save, I believe it's either 6 or 8 EDIDs right there on the machine. We can take an EDID from something completely different if we want to, any of these memory slots right here, and we can see this detailed EDID information. We can also save the EDID, again, so you can share it with other people if you need to. Now, under the general info, we sort of saw this on the front panel, some of the different things that it supports when it comes to 3D, HDR, all the different resolutions that it supports. We can come down to the video information. Again, we see the preferred timing is 3840 by 2160 at 30 frames per second, which is very interesting because if you sent this TV 3840 by 2160 at 60 frames per second, you might have an issue getting picture to display. It does look like it does 1920 by 1080i at 60 frames per second and 1920 by 1080p at 60 frames per second, but I'm not seeing much here about 4K 60. So this could be something that you really want to look at before maybe before recommending this TV to somebody. If they're a gamer, for example, you're probably going to want 4K 60. But how are you supposed to know this without being able to read the EDID? That's kind of the point here. For the audio information, you have all the different audio formats, all the different sampling rates, everything that this specific TV supports. Now, again, we're plugged into a TV right now. We could also be plugged into an AVR or a surround sound processor or anything with an input. Remember, guys, anything with an HDMI input is going to have an EDID. So you can really get down and dirty here, and you can see exactly what's going on with the display. Yes, Tom, what's up?
Tom, just popping in here. We can just see the dark 6G right now.
Can you not see the PowerPoint?
No.
Okay, you cannot see the PowerPoint. So give me just a moment here. Let me turn off my camera, and I'm going to share my screen one more time, and that should.
There we go. Now we can see it.
Thanks, guys.
So sorry,
thank you, Tom.
Yep, no problem.
No worries, man. Thanks for the heads up. Thanks for the backup there. Okay, guys. So again, as I was saying before, here's the hex code for the EDID. You can copy this. You can save it. You can do all kinds of cool stuff here. You can see exactly what the TV is asking for, the brand, the model number, everything that it supports as far as HDR, 3D, things like that we saw before. But what's really neat here is you can see a much deeper dive of all the different video formats that it supports, all the different audio formats that it supports. As I was mentioning before, you guys didn't see it obviously, but when we looked at the main preferred timing of this TV, it's 3840 by 2160. We can only do 60 hertz, it looks like, at 1920 by 1080, either in 1080p or 1080i. Now that could be because maybe the HDMI input on this TV maybe is not quite set up correctly. So if we were to change the input and do things like turn on deep color, which is very common on a lot of TVs, you might actually see the EDID change. So, getting a display set up for 4K and HDR is really a combination of two things. Making sure the EDID in the TV is right by turning on deep color, and then reading the EDID here with the 6G and just making sure that the EDID is actually correct. So again, guys, the software is here to help you. There's a bunch of different tabs up here, so you can actually control the generator. In a lot of cases, sometimes I'll find myself having to put the generator in a rack, and then I can just run a longer USB cable from the generator to my laptop. Maybe I've got a little table set up in that room and outside of the rack. But we can go in, we can set geometry. We can do 4K geometry, native 4K test patterns, which is nice. Under the timing details, maybe you're a manufacturer for some specific reason, you need to make a specific shape and size of a test pattern. You can do that here. customize resolutions if you want to. You can hand pick whatever pattern you want to see on the screen. The other tab here are different settings, just part of the setup for the 6G itself. So you can do things like turn HDCP off and on from this menu. Then we have the TV EDID, which we kind of already looked at before. If you're a calibrator, these RGB triplets are very, very valuable. There might be different instances where you want to look at specific test patterns in a specific color with a specific color background. So lots of cool things you can do here as well. Then you have the HDR tab up here. Here's where you can see things like the AVI info frame and all the things that pertain to this TV when it comes to HDR. Cool. So Tom, any questions on the 6G so far?
Looks like we're looking good. The one question came in about upgrading to 8K, but looks like Dustin answered him in the chat.
Perfect. Yeah, and Dustin's going to reach out to anybody that's watching this live, at least. Anybody who's watching this, Dustin's going to reach out and give you guys lots of information about some of the things we have going on right now as far as that goes. Okay, cool. Thank you, Tom. And let's move on now. And I'm going to keep sharing my screen. And let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now we'll talk about the analyzer a little bit. And while we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. Again, the analyzer can be used as a standalone tool, which some people use it as a standalone tool, but using it in conjunction with the 6G or any kind of source or any kind of signal generator, the analyzer is going to tell you exactly what's going on. So let's take the generator, and I'm going to plug in another HDMI cable. We're going to send the analyzer some signal, and then we're going to see exactly what the analyzer is telling us that's coming out of the generator. So let's plug in the analyzer here.
And for right now, Jason, we can only see the PowerPoint.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to turn my camera on just a moment. Thank you for that. And now you guys should be able to see the camera. And I'll turn off the PowerPoint too, so you might be able to get a better look at the analyzer. Okay.
Cool. We can see it great.
Awesome. The analyzer is pretty interesting because you can see on the screen here a live preview of what the source is sending out or whatever you're plugged into. So you can see that live. You can see exactly what's going on. There is still images that you can look at or actual full motion video. So if I was plugged into, say, a cable box or a Blu-ray player or anything like that, you would see full motion video right here on the screen. If we go into the menu by pressing OK, then we can start to see the signal information. This is the really valuable stuff. This is why you buy this machine. So we look at the signal info, we can see exactly what's coming out of the generator. The timing is 1920 by 1080, 60 frames per second. The color space is 422, Rec 709 color gamut. No HDCP. I must have the HDCP turned off on the generator right now. There's no HDR metadata. The total bandwidth is 4.5 gigs. The audio sampling frequency is 48K at 24 bits. So this tells you everything that's coming out of your source or coming out of, maybe you're testing the output of an AVR. We've seen plenty of cases where the AVR does something funky because of its EDID. So you're putting, 4K out of your source or out of your generator, but only 1080p is coming out of the AVR. So very valuable tool. It's basically plug and play. Plug in your HDMI cable, press the OK button, and boom, you'll see everything that you need to see right there on the screen. So let's take a quick look at the software for the 6A. And give me just a moment here to connect to it. I'll go ahead and pull it over here, and COM16 is what I have this one set for. I've got many USB devices plugged in right now, so I've got to choose that. Okay, so we take a look over here. Now we've got the 6A software up on the screen, very similar to kind of what we saw before, where you have different tabs across the top for different things. Now there's not as many tabs here for the analyzer as there is for the generator, because the analyzer's job is just to tell you what's going on. What gets really interesting about the analyzer, the analyzer can act as a sync device. It basically is a sync device. So if I plug the analyzer into a TV, for example, I can read the EDID from the TV. Boom, there's the EDID for this Hisense TV. Then I can save this EDID to the analyzer. Now, why would I want to do that? So let's say, for example, you've got a system where you have a rack in one room and you've got a TV 2 or 3 rooms over. Very, very common. So I want to be able to test the signal flow. I want to be able to test the full system end to end to make sure that the proper signal's coming through. So why would I want to copy the EDID? So if I'm holding the 6A in my hand, I can go to the display, plug it in, read the EDID, and I can do this from the front panel too, guys. You don't have to do this with the software. I just see more information here, which is kind of why I like to use it. So I can copy the EDID from the display. I can save the EDID into the 6A. Now the 6A is basically this Hisense TV in the palm of my hand. So now I can walk over to the rack, plug the analyzer into the output of the rack. Now the rack sees a Hisense TV like it may have done before. Now I can do any troubleshooting that I may have to do right there at the rack without having to run from the rack room out to where the TV is, see if there's a picture or not. I can do everything right there at the rack, which is super, super valuable. Again, it saves you a ton of time and you get a lot more accomplished with doing it this way. We'll go through the tabs here just kind of briefly. You can see exactly what's coming in as far as horizontal, vertical lines. You can see even the blanking. If you're an engineer or maybe you're making custom test patterns or custom content for somebody, these are the kind of things that you'll want to see, and these are the kind of things that you want to change if you're doing that type of stuff. The color checker is pretty cool. This is actually a pretty interesting feature of the 6A. If I plug in, let's actually do it. If I plug in, again, like I said, the generator. So right now we're looking at, very simple, we're looking at the checkerboard pattern. So let's fire up the camera here so you can actually see it. All right, now you guys should be seeing the checkerboard pattern on the 6A. So now if I go over to the 6A software, I can click this download image button, and oh, it did not save for some reason. That's okay. Normally what you do is you click the download image button, it'll pull that image into the software and you'll see it under that full image box. So now I can use these up and down and left and right arrows. Let's say I wanted to know exactly what shade of white was in that checkerboard test pattern. We can go exactly with the up and down and left and right arrows. We can pick a pixel that's white, that's part of the test pattern, and it'll tell us exactly here what the RGB triplets or the RGB values are. So again, this is super valuable stuff, especially if you're doing anything where you need to see a specific color of something. Maybe you work for a sports team and maybe you're on the design side and you want to make sure that the colors coming out of your PowerPoint presentation or the colors that you're using to proof the color of the uniforms or anything along those lines, you can certainly do that here and you can see a lot of information. The monitor tab, that will show us exactly what's going on when it comes to what we call the signal monitor test. So how many times have you guys, especially if you're doing a lot of integration work, you show up to a job site because you have a troubleshooting ticket or troubleshooting order, and of course you show up to the job site and things are working correctly. It happens to all of us. So what's really cool about the 6A is you can put this in place of, say, a display, and you can monitor the HDMI traffic over time. So if there are any dropouts or any differences in pixels, where maybe the picture only drops out for a second, or maybe there's some distortion in the picture because the picture's flickering or anything along those lines, you can actually see that here in the software. So the last page, the last tab we're going to look at is the EDID page. This is very similar to what we saw on the 6G. You can see all of the EDID information as far as the hex code. We can save the EDID to the 6A itself, and again, just see different things about this TV, all the way down to the hex code if we want to. Okay, a few more things about the 6A. We'll just run through some of the stats real quick. The 6A is a full 18 gigabit per second analyzer, just like the 6G is full 18 gigabits per second. We can see any sort of HDR that's coming through. So maybe you have one of those instances where Dolby Vision is not getting through or HDR10 is not getting through. You will be able to see this with the analyzer. Let's go to the next slide. And we talked about 18 gigabits per second. This is the world we live in right now. If you have a situation where maybe it's a customer who's really into gaming, you do want to make sure that the customer is getting 4K 60, for example. So being able to read that right there on an analyzer, if you're not getting 4K 60, but your source is set to 4K 60, now you can start to take the analyzer and sort of go device to device. And we'll sort of see that here in this diagram. So this is a very common system where we have a couple of 4K sources going through a matrix switch. 2 outputs of the matrix switch are going straight to two different TVs with HDMI. Maybe these are a little bit closer. And then there's another TV maybe in a kitchen halfway across the house. So the third output of the matrix switch is going into a transmitter, then a category cable into a receiver, and then HDMI. HDMI into the receiver, audio video receiver, and then another HDMI cable out to the TV itself. So we've got a lot going on here. 2 sources, 3 displays, an extender kit hooking up the third display, and then an AVR for that room. Probably not a kitchen in that case. It's probably like a TV watching room or maybe even a theater. This could even be a projector. So here's how you could do some troubleshooting. If I put the generator in place of the source and I max everything out to say 4K 60 444, we can now see if that signal is getting all the way through this full system over to this display. We'll put the analyzer in place of display. So if I set this to 4K 60, everything goes through, and on the other end, I'm 1080p 60, then I know that something in the signal chain is knocking the resolution down from 4K down to 1080p. So here's how I would do this if I were in the field. First, I have the generator in place of the source, okay? Now that's putting 4K 60 straight into the matrix switch. So what I might do here is take the analyzer and actually put it in place of this display. So if I have 4K 60 coming out here, and maybe I've got 4K 60 coming into the analyzer, great, that's awesome. Well, maybe that's not the case. Maybe you've got 1080p 60 coming out of the matrix switch. So what do we have to look at here? What's the common denominator between this TV and this TV down here? It's the matrix switch. So maybe I have to go into the matrix switch. Maybe there's an output setting I missed. Maybe there's an EDID setting that I missed for 4K 60. So the sources aren't able to put that out. Lots of different things here that you can look for. So the next thing I might do, let's say the matrix switch is passing 4K 60, no problem. Okay, cool. So we know the source is set to 4K 60. We know the generator is set to 4K 60. We know the matrix switch is passing 4K 60, but we're still only getting 1080p on this side. So now we'll take the generator, we'll put it in place of the matrix switch, and we'll pump 4K 60 through the extender kit and eventually through the AV receiver and eventually to the TV. So if I take the generator, I've got it set to 4K 60, we pump through the extender kit, and I still got only 1080p on this side. Well, what's the next thing in the signal chain? We've got the extender and then the receiver. So what I might do here is put the analyzer in place of the AVR that's in this possibly theater room, and we'll see if 4K 60 is coming through the extender kit. So if I have the analyzer right here and I'm getting 1080p 60, then we know the extender kit is probably the culprit here because we were getting 4K 60 out of the matrix switch. But let's keep going. Let's say the extender kit, we put the analyzer right here. We're still only getting 1080p 60. The only 2 things left in the signal chain here are the AV receiver and the television. So I might put the generator in place of the AVR, pump 4K 60 into the TV, use the analyzer in place of the TV. Boom, we've got 4K 60. We've confirmed that on the television and on the analyzer. So then we'll take the generator, we'll put it right in front of the receiver, pump 4K 60 through. If 4K 60 is not showing up on this display, then we know the AV receiver is the culprit. Again, this could be a few different things. It could be an output setting. Maybe the output setting is fixed to 1080p, and in the setup, you missed the setting where you set it to 4K 60. That could be a simple case as well. The AVR also has an EDID as well, and that could be set to maybe 1080p. So a lot of different things could be going on here to make this system not optimized and not working its best. But again, rather than saying, well, maybe the source is a problem, let's order another cable box. You put a new cable box in, still the same problem. Maybe it's the matrix switch, let's swap that out. Maybe it's these cables, let's swap those out. Maybe it's the extender, maybe it's this AVR. So you spend half a day or a full day just guessing and swapping things out, and you still end up with the same problem at the end of the day. I'd much rather come in with a generator, with an analyzer, take 10 minutes to hook things up and start reading things. And if the signal is not getting its way to the other end, we can spend a few more minutes going from device to device and eventually get back to the source and eventually figure out what the heck is going on here. One thing I'll touch on here in just a moment is this extender kit. So in this particular example, everything is HDMI except for that category cable. So how do you know that that category cable is not limited on bandwidth? Maybe it's an old category cable, maybe it's damaged in some type of way, maybe it wasn't terminated very well. How do you know? So we have another tester that we'll look at here towards the end of the presentation that will actually be able to test for that for that category cable. So, okay, We'll kind of leave the 6A and 6G to that. Again, we don't have a ton of time here. There's lots more things and lots more features we can look at, but let's go ahead and move on to the Fox and Hound. I mentioned the Fox and Hound before as being kind of the everyday integrator tool. You know, there's lots of reasons why you'd want the 6A and 6G, especially if you're calibrating. But if you're not calibrating, or maybe you just need something that's a little simpler, the Fox and Hound is your go-to tool. The Fox and Hound doesn't do things like hooking up to your favorite calibration software. It doesn't hook up to a PC to see some of the advanced EDID information, for example, but it does everything you need to do as far as 18 gigabits per second. We can see, you know, with whether HDR is coming through or not. We can see different versions of HDCP. We can do the same stuff with EDID as we could with the 6A and 6G. One thing I do want to point out here with the Fox and Hound, and also the 6A and 6G can do this too, but a lot of people out there see the Fox and Hound, and one of the first things they notice about it is the HDMI cable test. Again, you can do this with the 6A and 6G as well. With this Fox and Hound generator and analyzer, it's very, very simple. So let me fire this camera back up, and you guys should be able to kind of see what's going on here. Now I have the exposure set kind of low so you can see the screen. So hopefully this makes sense. So I've got the generator here. I'm going to plug in an HDMI cable. Let's go ahead and make sure that's turned on. Okay, the generator is firing up now. And then let's take the analyzer, and on the other end of the analyzer, we're going to plug in the other end of that HDMI cable. So here we go. Boom, boom, generator, analyzer. Now this might be a HDMI cable that I don't know if it passes 18 gigs or not. Maybe you show up to a client's home and they say, hey, I've already got HDMI cables. Let's just use those. Well, if you're going from a 1080p system to a 4K system, how in the world are you supposed to know if that's actually doing what it's supposed to do? So again, guys, I've got the generator with an HDMI cable plugged in. The other end of the HDMI cable is plugged into the analyzer. So if we go over to the analyzer, there's a big giant button here that says cable test. We're going to push the cable test button. And then on the analyzer, we can pick different bandwidths and different formats that we want to test for. So you can scroll through here. There's 6 selections. We can go anywhere from 18 gigs down to 14, 9, 4.5, 2.2, and 1. So if I want to test the full capabilities of this cable, I press the cable test button. So that's one button press. The number 1 slot is already highlighted for 18 gigs. I don't have to push any buttons there. And then I have the OK button. So I pressed 2 buttons, and now we're doing a full bandwidth test on this HDMI cable. So a couple things that you'll notice here. One is the 5 volt. Great, it sees something on the other end. Awesome. The next 3 lines are the data channels. Those are the TMDS lines. If you don't know what those are the 3 lines inside of the cable that are carrying the important stuff, all the audio and the video information. And as you can see right now, this cable passes on data channel 0, 1, and 2. We have 0 errors in all 3 cases. Great sign. Under that, we have the DDC channel. That's all of your HDCP and all of your EDID information. That channel passes as well. And then the hot plug passes there at the very bottom. So what does that tell us about this cable? This cable can pass 18 gigs. It's passing all the signals that we want to. It's not, you know, defective or bent or anything like that, because then we would have some failures here. Now, it did come up 0 errors for each TMDS line. You know, and there might be some cases where it comes up with 1 or 2 errors. That's usually okay. But if the cable is defective, we've done this in classes before. We'll take a razor knife and intentionally cut the cable, and you'll see like thousands and hundreds of errors here. So if you see that type of stuff, you know the cable's bad, toss it, grab another cable, test that one. The good cable replaces the bad cable. Now when you go to do this installation in 3 days, you know all of your cables are good to go. So another simple example of what you can use these tools for. Let's switch over back to the PowerPoint briefly and just look at some of the diagrams here. This diagram is just a very simple distribution system. This could be something simple as a matrix switch. It could be an AVR. It could be an extender kit. It could be lots of different things, but very similar to the 6A and 6G combo. Put the generator in place of the source, put the analyzer in place of the display or the sync device. You know, pump a signal through, whether you want it to be 4K or 1080p or whatever the case is. It's very easy to set the generator to 4K. I just want to show you this really quick because it's a feature that I personally use all the time. So if I take the generator, there's a button right on the top row that says 4K, and above that button is 18 gigabits per second. If I press the button, that lets me go through the generator and select a 4K resolution with a specific frame rate. But if I press and hold the 4K button, now the generator is going to kind of max everything out to a full 18 gigabits per second. So right now, I don't know if you can see this very well, but it's 3840 by 2160, 60 frames per second. Now we take the analyzer. The analyzer has an info button. We press the info button on the analyzer and boom, there's our signal information right there. So you've got 4K, 60, 444, RGB, no HDCP, 8 bits, 17.8 gigs, HDR10 is present, a little bit of information down at the bottom for audio, which codec it might be, what the sampling rate is, how many channels it's set to. So very similar to the 6A, 6G. I do like this kit. It's a little bit smaller, still battery powered, still handheld, all those great things that you like about the 6A and 6G. Again, this is more of like kind of an everyday sort of tool. Okay, the next slide we'll look at is one of my favorites. We use this all the time. This is kind of a basic system, if you will, or not basic, I don't want to say that. This is a common system that you'll see in a home or maybe in a business. Very similar to the one we looked at before. This one's a little bit easier to read because we have certain indicators here of where to put the generator and the analyzer. So in this particular system, we have 3 sources going through a matrix switch to 2 TVs. The 2 TVs are connected by an HD-based T extender. So the blue boxes that you see here are where you can put a generator. So if you're starting at the source and working your way to the display, we can put the generator after the source, pump it through the matrix switch, see what's coming out on the other end. At this point, we're testing the matrix switch. Okay, the matrix switch is passing what it's supposed to. Great. Now let's put the generator after the matrix switch, pump signal through the extender kit and then to the TV. Now we can see exactly what's coming through and then to the TV. We can do that on the other output of the matrix switch as well. Now, if the extenders are passing the signal and everything's okay, then we can put the generator in right in front of the display. So if I hit 4K 60 on the generator and I'm not getting 4K 60 at the display, maybe I missed a setting in the display with the HDMI input, lots of different things that can go wrong here, but now you know. If you're working your way backwards, which is totally fine too, you can put the analyzer in place of the display and you can read what's coming in. If the correct signal is coming in, you can move on to right before the extender kit, and then you can move on to right before the matrix switch, AKA right after the source. So some people like to start with this source and work their way up to the display. Some people like to start with the display, work their way back to the source. It really just depends on what's going on and what's happening and what the symptoms are of this system. So again, just another sort of chart, wiring diagram for you to look at, just to give you an idea of where you can actually put these things. So here's some common problems that we run into all the time when it comes to especially distributed video. We have no video. There's nothing coming out on the other end. That happens. That's what we can use the tools for. If I put the analyzer in place of the display and there's still no signal coming through, I know there's nothing wrong with the display. So you kind of get the point there. You can start working your way back towards the source to find the culprit. Maybe there's no 4K. We kind of talked about this before in the couple previous slides. If you're sending out 4K, it's not actually getting 4K. Now you know. Now you can start to figure out what's going on. Sometimes you get incompatible video. We see a lot of times where sometimes there's like a mismatch in color space. The picture will come out on the other end, but it'll be green or purple. That usually tells you that there's a mismatch between like RGB and YCBCR, for example. If you want to read the EDID, you can certainly do that either with the Fox and Hound kit or of course the 6A, 6G. So if I read the EDID of a display, it says 1080p 60. Well, no wonder we're not getting 4K on the other end. So quickly read the EDID, see what's going on, and you can kind of go from there. Putting the analyzer in place, right after the source, that will tell you if there's any problems with the source itself. So if I set the source to 4K 60 and plug in the analyzer right after the source, it should be 4K 60. And most of the times it will be. Sources usually, when you set them to a forced output, they normally behave and do what they're supposed to do. Where sources can get kind of freaky is if you set the output to auto, because then the source is not going to put out the proper signal or a signal until it sees an EDID from a display on the other end. So if the source is set to 1080p 60 for the EDID and you have a 4K TV on the other end, the 4K TV, if it's not been configured yet, it might only ask for 1080p. So, being able to read EDIDs and find out exactly what's going on with all these different things that might be in the signal chain, again, it's just going to make your life easier when it comes to troubleshooting. So one example I wanted to show you, just because I've got it here, is the is the Fox and Hound, and it might be a little easier here if I do this on the main camera just to see a little bit better. So what we're going to do here is take a extender kit, transmitter receiver, very common to what you guys probably see every day. We're going to take a category cable and we're going to connect the transmitter to the receiver. Again, nothing out of the ordinary here. So we're going to go HD base T on the receiver, HD base T on the transmitter. We're going to take the generator, we're going to plug it into the transmitter, and then the display will be plugged into the receiver. So now what we're really doing here is we're testing the extender kit to make sure that it's passing the signal that we want it to. And then let's turn the input on the TV. Oh, TV went to sleep. Let's turn it back on and let's see what we've got going on here. Now let's fire up the camera on the TV and we see something and we hear something, so that's a good sign. So if I look at the generator right now, it's still set to 4K 60. So we can see that there is signal coming out on the other end. I could take the analyzer and we could put it in place of the TV and we can see on the analyzer exactly what's happening. That camera looks like it got a little. Okay, you also hear a test tone. There are test tones built in for audio confidence, both in the 6G and in the Fox and Hound generator. You can come into the Fox and Hound and the 6G, and you can turn the volume all the way down if you don't need the test tones, or if it's just maybe annoying to you, you can certainly do that. So right now we're getting 4K 60 through the extender kit to the TV, and I know everything's going to be okay with the extender kit. If I'm not getting 4K 60 on the other end and where the display is at, then we can start looking at the extender. Some of your more advanced extenders will have EDID management built into them. So, there might be a case where you have to actually change the EDID on the extender itself. So just a quick hands-on thing there, real quick for you guys. This is an extender kit. It could be an AVR. It could be a matrix switch. It could be a combination of multiple devices if you want to. Again, the point here is, am I getting the proper signal on the other end? And here's just another way you can tell. Okay, let's unplug that because it's going to drive everybody crazy. And I'm going to plug in our next product, which is going to be the Murideo 7G. This is a great tool. I'm using it more and more every day because we're starting to have to do some of these more advanced tests for things like ARC and eARC and latency and things that, have mattered in the past, but matter really, really a lot now. The 7G, as I said before, this is a tool that an integrator could use or a calibrator could use. It's got like 1,000 test patterns in it. It does work with your favorite calibration software, no matter which one you like. We can do things like audio video latency. We can do sync tests. What's really cool about this is it has tons of memory in it. So if you wanted to upload your own custom 4K HDR clips, you could certainly do that. Maybe you want to upload your own test patterns, you can certainly do that. There are some big name test patterns in here from Spears and Munsell, from Sony, from the ISF, from Diversified Video Solutions. So again, if you're a calibrator, awesome tool. Where most people use this tool right now, at least, is for the Dolby and some of the newer surround formats for testing. So if I'm a manufacturer and I want to make sure that Dolby is working correctly with ARC or eARC, this is the tool that will let you do it. Other things like you can do 120 frames per second. This is still the HDMI 2.0 version of this device, and of course we do have in the future an HDMI 2.1 version coming as well. 120 frames per second is nice because there are a lot of displays that can do that right now. So we can go to a specific video test. And sorry, I really wanted to put this one on the table so you guys could see it, but it's kind of just too big. So we will be able to see some of these tests on the TV itself. So right now we're looking at an image or video clip, I should say, which is 120 frames per second. You can see how smooth it is. This is a nice test if you're a display manufacturer or if you're an integrator trying to make sure that the display is showing 120 hertz correctly.
Jason, I'm seeing only your PowerPoint right now.
Oh, thank you for the heads up. Let me go back here and smash a button, and now you should be good.
Now I see that TV.
Tom, I'm so glad you're here, man. Like I said before, I almost need like an executive producer or an assistant or something. But no, thank you for that, Tom. So this is a 120 frames per second test clip. This comes straight out of the 6G. I'm sorry, the 7G. There's actually a couple of them in here that do 120 frames per second. This is one of my favorite ones right here because you can actually read the words on the truck that are going by in the different vehicles. It might look a little choppy right now just because the camera we're using, I think, is set to 24 frames per second, but this is 120 frames per second. I did upload a couple of my own custom video files, which is kind of cool. This is like a 4K HDR, 24 frames per second. I did upload this to the device itself. So, you know, the built-in images and test patterns, and it's all very good stuff. But you know, if you're really looking for something specific in the picture, it's very, very good and very smart to have something that you're very familiar with. So again, uploading these things. Another one that I uploaded is for when we have to do testing on LCD monitors, where maybe we're looking for where the local dimming zones are, things like that. I did upload this this image as well. But again, you can do this however you'd like. I do want to show you the latency test because that's something that a lot of people use, whether you're an integrator, calibrator, manufacturer, everybody needs to know latency on a display or through an audio system even. So for example, if I am trying to optimize a system for a gamer, I'm going to want to make sure the latency is as low as possible. I'm going to want to look at things like game mode on this TV to make sure the latency is as low as possible. So how do we measure the latency? Let's go into the menu here. I'm going to show you a couple of things once the TV is lit up again. Let's do this. So the 7G comes with a couple of accessories. The first thing that we'll look at is this. It's called a photodiode, and it's just a small little sensor on a suction cup. I hope you can see it in the camera, but we're going to put that right dead center of the display. Again, it's just a tiny little photodiode. The whole thing's about the size of a thumb drive, if that. We also have a small microphone. Looks like a little lapel mic, like you'd see a news anchor maybe wearing. So now I can take the microphone and I can put it just underneath or right at the speaker of the TV. Now I can go into the 7G and we can pull up under the audio test menu. We can pull up the sync and latency test and watch what happens. I'm going to pick PCM just for demonstration purposes. So right now we have a 2-channel PCM audio signal coming out of the generator, and we're going to test the latency of it. So if you can hear it, you might be able to. There's a very faint beep. It's much louder in the room, but maybe because of where the microphone is, it might seem quiet. So what we're looking at right here is a flash on the screen. The photodiode's picking that up, and we know the video latency. The microphone is where the speaker is at, so now we know the audio latency. So if we know the video latency and the audio latency, if things aren't lined up correctly, we might have some lip sync issues. So I run this test. I know if there's a delay. Now I can go back to some device in the signal chain. Could be an AVR, could be a lot of different things. Seen lots of AVRs out there where you can adjust the delay. So if you have that customer who says, hey, the lips don't match up with the voice, you can run this test, check some numbers, and then make up for the compensation. You can make up for that possibly in the AVR. Again, this is also important for manufacturers. If I'm a manufacturer and a core audience or a core customer of mine are gamers, then before this TV hits the market, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the latency is as low as possible. And that's why we have things like game mode, which is kind of cool. Something else that we'll take a quick look at. I'm going to turn off the camera for just a moment. And let's mute that. I'm going to pull up the 7G software just so you can kind of see what it looks like at least. Now the 7G software, what we're going to look at right now is just the control software. You can control the 7G remotely through IP or through serial or through USB even. Right now I have it set to, I have it connected to the computer with USB. And then the COM port on 7 is COM 8. So we're going to come over here. We're going to fire up COM 8. We should get a connected here, and oh, Hey, it helps if I plug in the USB cable, Mr. Jason. Give me just a second, guys. Sorry for the delay. Okay. So we're gonna go COM8 and then open. Now we're connected. Okay, it helps when you plug the USB cable in. Okay, so everything that I can do on the 7G, I can do here in this software. This is a free download. In fact, all of our software is free. If you go to murideo.com, you can download 6A, you can download 6G, you can download 7G software. There is more than one type of software for the 7G. We'll take a quick look at that, but we don't have to go through a lot here, guys. This is sort of like the 6G software where you have different tabs across the top. Anything that you can do on the generator itself, you can do up here in the tabs. So let's say I want to read the EDID. I go to the EDID tab, read the EDID, boom, there's the EDID of the Hisense again. I can save it. I can do whatever I want with it. Another piece of software I want you to see at least is this is a really very cool piece of software. If I'm a manufacturer, this is very powerful software. Normally this could be thousands and thousands of dollars, but we offer it to you for free. So what this is called a protocol analyzer. So if I'm a manufacturer, I need to monitor the HDMI traffic going from device to device. If I'm an engineer, this is super important information. So we can monitor the HDMI traffic over time. Then we can, what we call, parse it out. So if I just want to see down to the millisecond when that 5 volt happened, or when the video started, or when the eARC signals were sent or received, we can see that with the protocol analyzer software. There is also a device logger software which kind of keeps track of all your button presses. If you're doing very extensive testing that's taking you like half a day and you get to a point where things aren't right, you can go back into the device log software and you can see if maybe you hit a wrong button at some point. Just keep track of everything that you've done with the generator. There's also on the website as well, if you do want to upload your own clips, whether it's to the 6G or to the 7G, there is, again, free software on the website to be able to upload custom stuff if you'd like to do it. Okay, 7G, again, very powerful tool. We have a handful of calibrators out there who are using it. We have a lot of manufacturers out there that are using it too. A few integrators here and there as well, some of the ones that like to do some of the advanced things. This is sort of what we looked at before, just in a diagram. I know it was kind of dark on that camera, so holding things up, you might not have seen it very well, but if we have, for example, here, we've got the 7G as the source. We've got the visual probe connected to the TV, just suction cupped right on the front. Then we have the microphone connected to the 7G, and the microphone is right in front of a sound bar, or it's right in front of a pair of speakers that's been being powered by an AVR. So I run the latency test. Again, I can see what's going on with the audio, and I can see what's going on with the video. If there is a difference, I can go to this sound bar, to this AVR, and I can compensate for it. So another simple test, very effective, very easy to do with some really good information. Okay, last but not least, and how are we doing on time? Oh, we're pretty good. That's good for me. Normally I'm over. So the next piece that we're going to look at is called the MS Test Pro. This thing is cool, and we've actually done a few tutorials of this device on our YouTube channel. So if you want to see some really cool testing, a little bit more than what we're going to look at today, I would highly suggest checking out that YouTube video. So let me grab the unit, and we're going to go ahead and turn it on, and let's look at it under the camera so you can kind of see what it's all about. Okay, it is turning on right now, so let's give that a moment. And it's kind of what I really like about it is big. It's kind of a big machine, but it's still battery powered, which is cool. Now, what we can do here, we can do, if you're an integrator, especially if you do big commercial jobs, or maybe you're doing a big job in a residential home, and you're just dealing with a ton of category runs for HD-based-T, how do you know if those HD-based-T runs are actually good or not? And that's really what this device does. It also allows us to test things like the HDMI cable. So you can do quite a bit with this. Where this machine really shines is the fact that you can document all of your test results, and they're certified, and you can print them out for your client. So if I'm doing a big commercial job with 85 HD-based-T runs, I want to go through and I want to certify each one of those cables, and I want to make sure that all of those cables are passing the proper signal and the health of that cable is good. If the cable is questionable, maybe I've got a bad termination, this is where you want to find out. You don't want to get a call in a week with the customer saying, hey, that one TV in the classroom keeps flashing. Why? Now you've got to go back and check it out. This will help you save those types of truck rolls. So let me switch cameras. It'd be easier to see here. On the very bottom slot, we have a transmitter, which is already in the unit. We're going to take the category cable in question. We're going to plug it in to the transmitter and the other end into the receiver. Now, what's cool about this is a modular system. So if I want to test for HD-base-T, I can go with a transmitter and a receiver. If I want to do a little bit more of a deep dive on that cable to make sure it's passing power correctly, there are other modules to let you do a lot of other cool things. We have what's called a DC resistance module. I want to test that cable for power. We also have the HDMI cable test module. If I want to test HDMI cables, I can certainly do that. Let's see, I'm also missing this. This is called the looper, which we'll use for the DC resistance test and the HDMI cable test. So let's take another look at the MS Test Pro, and let's take a look at this cable. Let's see what kind of shape it's in. You can use it as a touchscreen, or I like using the little stylus. I just find it easier. So we go into the HD-base-T analyzer, and this is so simple. We look at the basic analysis. Now this is testing the cable itself. Now I have the receiver on one end and the transmitter on the other. Oh, one thing I forgot to do. There is a small, there's a small what's called a POH adapter. That's just a little, I call it a bumper, but the POH adapter, it's normally installed in the bottom of the unit. You will have to put that on the receiver before you do your testing. That gives the receiver power. So let's switch back over to, now that the receiver is powered, take a look at this. The general link quality is green. This is a very simple green, yellow, red, just like a traffic light. So when I have all green here, I know the cable is most likely going to be totally fine when it comes to passing a signal. Green is good. There is yellow, which means maybe you'll probably be okay. And then there's red, which means the cable is a total failure. So maybe there's a bad termination. Maybe it is damaged in some type of way. Maybe the cable's too long. It could be a handful of different things. It also tells you some other information too. The chip type that's in the transmitter and receiver, the length of the cable, which can be very handy. If the cable's too long, you're going to have some problems with HD-base-T. Right now it's showing the cable is under 60 feet, which is normal. It's a pretty short cable. Anything over 60 feet, you'll get a more accurate reading of how long the cable is within about 5% or so. So again, very simple test. You can test these cables. You can document this. No big deal. We go back a menu, go back into the HD-base-T analyzer, and we'll look at the performance. We can see the max error and the average error at the transmitter. And again, we've got all green here, which is good. Then we can see the maximum error and the average error on the receiver. So if I maybe had a bad termination or something like that, we would see it here because we'd probably have a failure. The next thing I want to take a quick peek at, just because it's another valuable tool, is the DC resistance module. So one thing about the MS Test Pro, if you do have one, I do like to call this out, make sure you power it off before you swap out modules. So I like to do a soft power off on the unit itself. And once that is powered down, we can go ahead and put in the DC resistance module. So I'm still going to use the looper on the other end of the HD-base-T cable. So I unplugged that from the receiver, plugged it into the looper, and now I'm going to plug the other end of the the category cable into the DC resistance module, and then DC resistance module into the unit. Power it back up, and now we can test this cable for any power issues it might have. You know, especially with HD-base-T, you know, you may have only one end of the maybe you only have the transmitter powered, or maybe you only have the receiver powered. That's okay. We do that all the time. This test will let us know if that power is actually getting through, and if it's getting through in such a way that shouldn't cause any failures. So we're going to let this fire back up. Okay. a nice little loud beep there that lets you know it's ready to go. Now we're going to go into the tools menu. We're going to look at the DC resistance menu. Now we can see exactly what's going on as far as power goes. Now this is all going to be measured in resistance. So the very top option, the loop resistance, that tells you the resistance between each pair. So pair A, B, C, and D, we've got green check marks, all good. Then we can look at the parallel resistance. That's the two wires inside of each wire. Again, we want this to be, actually, let's just go back one. The green check marks are good, but what you're really looking for here is that it's under 20 ohms, and we're well under 20 ohms. Same with this test, under 20 ohms, we're well under. In fact, we're under 1 ohm. And then the last one here, we want to make sure we're under 0.2 ohms. That's the pair-to-pair resistance. So what's the resistance of each pair to the next pair inside of that cable? So A, B, C, and D, we have all green check marks. This should be under 0.2, and we're actually at 0.02 and 0.000 in a lot of other cases as well. So what does this tell us? We use the transmitter and receiver modules. We know that the cable is passing a signal. Then we tested for DC resistance. We know that the cable is passing power with no issue. So now I can kind of put a stamp on it, and this cable is, you know, I'm confident that this cable is going to work. Now we can bury it inside the wall. We should be good to go. What's also really cool is, like I said before, you can document, you can save this information. So if I'm testing 65 cables, at the very end of it, I can hand my customer a stack of paperwork and say, hey, look, every single cable in this system has been tested and it passes. Very valuable information. It makes you look very professional. This is what I would expect in a nicer or a higher end install, to say the least. So there are 4 USB slots at the top of the MS Test Pro. That's where you could put a thumb drive. We can save this information by pressing the save button. It's saving to the unit itself right now. And once it's done saving, I can push the download button and put that onto a thumb drive. The machine itself will put it into a PDF for you. So now I just take that thumb drive, pop it into my computer, look at the PDF, print it out, and I give all the information to my customer. So you can also test HDMI cables, as I said before. It's a very powerful tool. Again, it's handheld. One thing I really like about it is, remember that situation I talked about before where, you know, you might have to leave, I think we were talking about the 6G, maybe it was the 7, but you have to leave the 6G or the 7G in the rack. So you can do this with the MS Test Pro as well, which is really cool because I can now use a laptop or a smartphone or anything with a browser. So I've got my smartphone out right now. I'm going to go to my Wi-Fi settings, go to the network settings. Right now I'm connected to the Wi-Fi that's in the building. I want to connect to the MS Test Pro. So the very top option here is the Media Solutions 02B6. We're going to tap on that. Now my phone is going to connect to the MS Test Pro. It says it's connected but no internet. That's okay. Now we're going to go to a web browser and we're going to type in the IP address of the MS Test Pro. And in this case, 192.168.1.1. So if I have the MS Test Pro buried in a rack somewhere, or I just can't get to it for whatever reason, I have 100% full functionality. Everything I can do on the front panel with the with the MS Test Pro, I can now do right here on my phone. Very cool remote capabilities here. Doesn't have to be a smartphone. It could be a tablet. It can be a PC. Anything with a web browser. So another cool feature of that, which I really like a lot. Okay, and I think, wow, I think we're right at time, or maybe just slightly over, but let's take a look at the question box and see if there's anything that we can help with. Okay, looks like Tom, wow, Tom, thank you so much, man. Tom and Dustin too, you guys were answering all these questions. And I don't actually, unless I'm missing any, I don't see any new ones.
No, we got it pretty well taken care of for you there, Jason. There was just to kind of, you know, wrap up for some other people. Kind of the questions were revolving around, you know, looking at 8K, how the 6G currently can handle 8K and reading EDIDs. I'll just kind of give a brief explanation. This was from a question that Tom had. You know, can the 6G read 8K EDIDs? And it can read the EDIDs, but the information that it's not going to be able to tell you is max resolution and all of the 8K information. So it still has all that audio information. Will still show you the most, you know, the highest request or the resolution it likes the most, because even 8K displays say that the resolution it likes the most in their EDIDs is 4K. So it'll still show you all that information, but you're not going to get that full picture until you move on over to the 7 generator, and that's going to give you all the information. So that kind of just was what the questions were on. Other than that, not too much other things.
And that's normal, guys. I mean, when we first started seeing 4K TVs, and even some to this day, the factory out of the box EDID is 1080p. Why? Because it works. And they know it's going to work. So no matter what you hook up to it, you're going to be okay. If the EDID comes from the factory for 4K 60 and you have a source that maybe can't do it, then things get kind of weird, and maybe you don't get a picture, and maybe you return the TV to the store you bought it from. We don't want that to happen. The manufacturers certainly don't want that to happen. So they usually come out of the box with a safe EDID. So we've seen this before. It's not going to be anything new when we start looking at some 8K stuff as well. So guys, I think that's about it for today. I don't see any other new questions. Tom and Dustin, thank you guys so much for watching that question box. I got a lot going on here, so I really thank you for hanging out and helping me out. If you guys have any questions going forward, very easy to find us, jason@murideo.com, dustin@murideo.com, info@murideo.com. Don't forget, guys, check out the Murideo website. We've got a lot of cool information, some training modules up there right now. We have a training module for the Fox and Hound. We have a training module for the MS Test Pro, and very soon we'll have training modules for the 6A and 6G. Little quiz at the end. Let you know that you really understand how the device works. And also check out the Murideo YouTube page. We've been posting a lot of videos lately, a little more deep dives on some of these types of things. Feel free to check those out and let us know if you have any questions. We'd love to help, and that's why we're here. Other than that, guys, I think that's it. I don't see any new questions. Thank you so much. If you do have any further questions, don't hesitate. We're here to help. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.